Well, the top story this evening, the government is expected to issue a notification anytime now providing relief to startups and investors, that is the angel investors, on the angel tax issue. We've been discussing this for many weeks now here at CNBC TV 18, recently and previously as well, because remember, the ghost of the angel tax has continued to haunt the startup ecosystem. We've got about 100+ startup entrepreneurs who've written to various government bodies, to various ministers. iSpirit, which is the sort of organization that looks at startup-related issues, has also written to the Prime Minister's office. And this has been a matter that we've been taking up here on CNBC TV 18. Rituparna Bhuyan joins us now with the details. Ritu, there's been a lot of back and forth. The DIPP, the CBDT issuing circulars saying that there should be no coercive action. But nevertheless, this issue continues to hang fire. What can we now expect from the government?
Well, from what I have been told, the condition of a report from the merchant banker specifying the fair market value of shares, that will be removed. Instead, two specific conditions will be put which will be needed for applying to exemption from the Section 56 related norms. The first condition is that if you want to apply for an exemption of Section 56, then the aggregate amount of paid up share capital and share premium of the startup will be allowed to exceed 10 crores. If it exceeds 10 crores, then you will not be allowed this exemption. So if it is only up to 10 crores, only then you will be able to apply for exemption of Section 56. So this is condition number one. Now, for the investor, there are two conditions, and those two conditions are that the returned income of the investor will have to be at least rupees 50 lakh for the financial year preceding the year of investment. That is one. Secondly, the net worth of such an investor will have to exceed rupees 2 crore in the financial year preceding the year of investment. So these are the two conditions for the investor. Now, while doing that, what the new notification will do is to change the mechanism of grant of the exemption as well. Currently, this was supposed to be dealt with by Interministerial Board of Certification, which was basically based in DIPP. That will be scrapped. And instead, what will happen is all the applications will first have to be made to DIPP, and DIPP will then forward that application to CBDT, who within 45 days will say yes or no to the application for exemption.
Right.
Now, according to my sources, why this has been done, and this is the logic behind the conditions which have been put, is that there were concerns of CBDT on shell companies, investing in startups, and hence to take care of those concerns, the rupees 50 lakh minimum returned income, that condition has been put. Now, there were other concerns regarding is CBDT, competitive enough on valuation. On that, when I asked my source, I was told that yes, the CBDT would be at a better position to understand the implications of the valuation as well as the investments coming into startups. That is what the government is claiming. The notification will be out anytime soon. But to many startups whom we spoke to, they were not very convinced about these proposed conditions. They believe that there needed to have a complete exemption for DIPP recognized startups. That mechanism should have been continued with.
All right, Ritu, we'll await the official notification, but that is what we're given to understand is what the government is considering at this point by way of relief, responding to the myriad complaints that have come in from startups across India. Joining us now to take this conversation forward, Ashish Fafade of Bloom Ventures, Mohandas Pai of Aaron Capital, Srijit Mulyal of True Elements. We'll have more guests joining us, but Mr. Pai, let me come to you. You've had meetings with the government over this controversial and vexed issue. We are given to understand that perhaps a notification could be out shortly. And on the back of what you've just heard from my colleague Rituparna Bhuyan, what do you make of the proposed relief or the exemptions?
Shireen, first of all, I heard this, and if it comes through, it will be a great step forward. So I want to congratulate the government for being receptive and trying to help out and suggest some improvement to whatever has been said. First improvement should be that this if a startup raises 10 crores of money in a year, that they should be exempt from the Section 56 if you raise up to 10 crores. So you carve away and let away 90% of the companies. That's point number one. It should be 10 crores of convertible securities a year and not limited to only 10 crores for all time to come, because that will help take away a lot. Second, the condition about those investors should be an or and not an and. That means if there are a set of investors who are, got those kind of income and assets. Now, as for the income and assets concerned, in our write-up, we create a category of people called accredited investors. Those who have got not less than 25 lakhs of return income, not less than 1 crore of assets, and not less than 25 lakhs of liquid assets, so they could invest. And once you register as an accredited investor, and you are an accredited investor, the entire round should not come under 56. I think that is something that they should do. And the third thing, which is the third and fourth thing, two more points, is that, look, many of the startups raise money from friends and family. Your father may give 5 lakhs, your mother may give 5 lakhs, because they come from smaller towns, and we should have an exemption for those people because they're coming from relatives 5-10 lakhs. We should not bother them. So that is why if you say that if you raise up to 10 lakhs of equity, our securities convertible into equity, the up to 10 crores it should be exempt. And of course, the assessing officer can look at 66 or 68 and see whether the source of money is still there. For 56, it should go. And the last point which we should talk about is what happens to those people who have already got notices whose assessments have been happened. We need a mechanism where those companies can apply under these conditions, whatever enumerated. And if you pass the conditions, the certificate should go up to the assessing officer in appeal, the commissioner, and the commissioner to take cognizance of this when he decides to appeal. You cannot direct the commissioner to do a particular thing, but you can say that, look, please take cognizance of this. It's gone through the process. It's gone through this. Please do that. If these 4 things come, I think it'll solve 99% of the problem and people will be very happy.
Okay, so you're adding to the list of what we are picking up that the government may in fact put forward by way of that notification. But the ball still rests with the CBDT, Mr. Pai. The application of a recognized startup recognized by the DIPP will have to be submitted to the CBDT with the necessary documents, and the CBDT will then decide what course of action to take. Now, if we look at the past experience and the previous experience, the DIPP has had the startup policy in place since 2016, yet we've seen these notices being sent out by the CBDT, yet we've seen the CBDT saying no coercive action should be taken, but we've seen where things stand today. So does this not continue to lead to this passing of the buck between the DIPP and CBDT? Does it unequivocally clear the air on that?
Shireen, there is a problem in India which we have to acknowledge. We have met with the CBDT officials, the government officials, and they say, look, you are good guys, but you are not the country. There are a lot of these shell companies, a lot of these people who do fraud, and this is the only way we did. This came out of the act passed in 2012 by the UPA to catch the Jagan Mohan Reddy case, because the ED made a comment. ED had to mention that in the report. It came out of the report. But Jagan Mohan Reddy used to get fat premiums from people to whom he did favors, and they put money for small holding, and he had the majority holding. Now they say, please tell us, how do we go after companies which can do this? Now, we explained to them what to do, but they're not convinced, because they said, look, there are a lot of crooks in this country. We don't want to be misused, because tomorrow if we misuse, the CNAG will go after us. What will the poor assessing officer do? We want to have a law. So what we suggested to him was, look, first you have a carve-out so that the great majority of people will not be affected. What is the carve-out? You raise equity up to, or any security up to 10 crores in a year. Not for all time to come, you should be out. That will take care of the majority of cases. Second, you create a cadre of accredited investors who are, accredited, who got a number, who PAN can be done. And if they're accredited and they got a number and they invest, you don't go after the company. 56 will not apply. You can ask them for sources of the money. That is fine. But don't go after them for 56. So I think if both these conditions come about, it will work, because you're up to 10 crores. There will be a carve-out and a full exemption. There will be no evaluation of the, valuation by CBTD. See, the CBTD is very concerned about tax evasion. Let us admit it. That's a reality. Now, all of us come from industry where we don't evade tax. It is alien to us, right? But this country is not full of good people. There are some bad people too. We suffered because of these bad people. We suffered because Jagan Mohan Reddy's and all the case that happened. Now they have a carve-out. Until the CBDT comes out, gets some trust and understands what is happening, which we hope will shortly, something we have to meet a little bit halfway. So we have given the suggestion which hopefully will take care of 90%, 95%. And of course, for those who are stuck in the loop, they should go through the process too, and that should be considered for appeal.
Okay, let me bring in Ashish Fafadia of Bloom Ventures into the conversation as well. Ashish, as Mohandas Pai was saying, perhaps there is going to be a middle path that will be arrived at as and when this notification is issued, which we expect to be done shortly. Now, going back to the point that Mr. Pai was raising, that the aggregate amount of paid up share capital and share premium of the startup after the proposed issue of share, if any, does not exceed 10 crore rupees. Mr. Pai is saying that it should be a year and not for all time to come, but I don't know if that is going to be specified in the notification. That's the part that we don't have enough clarity on. But the second issue on the conditions attached to investors or a proposed investor, returned income of 50 lakh rupees or more for the financial year preceding the year of investment or proposed investment, net worth exceeding 2 crore rupees or the amount of investment made or proposed to be made in the startup, whichever is higher as on the last date of the financial year preceding the year of investment or proposed investment. What do you make of these conditions?
So, I do think that in the scenario where you're going to specify that both of these conditions are going to be applicable, you would end up with a scenario where a fair bit of people might still not be able to get the true benefit for the whole exemption that the DAPP is trying to put. There are enough people in the ecosystem today who are actually devoting a fair bit of their time to work with early stage companies, and these necessarily may not generate income of this quantum every year until they start having a cycle where they're going to make capital gains year after year. So I think they should definitely look at it, making or as Mr. Pai was referring to, and get a proper definition in India for an accredited investor, and not be regimental about cumulatively applying these conditions.
Okay, so you believe that a little more flexibility is warranted, and accredited investors, that categorization should in fact be made by way of this notification as well. We don't know whether they will or won't do it. But Srijit Mulyal, who's been part of this campaign to axe the tax, so to speak. Srijit, there is now an acknowledgement that the procedure of applying to the Interministerial Board of Certification for approval to get exemptions under Section 56, that hasn't been working. So that I am given to understand will perhaps be done away with, and the attempt will be to make this smoother and simpler. Is this enough, Srijit, on the back of everything that you've heard so far?
We have been hearing this various notifications for almost 14 months now.
Yes.
We raised this issue last year, 2017, December. Okay. And what we have got till date is nothing. Okay. I myself have applied in IMB. If the process is same, only the department is changing, there is actually no change. What they're telling is instead of DIPP you applying, you will now apply to CBDT. And what we are talking about, let me give you some numbers. Local Circles gave a survey with founders.
Yeah.
How many of us got IT notices?
Yeah.
6,800 startups participated. 67% of founders have got notices. That is the number we're talking about. Okay. That means if that is a massive problem, and if I'm talking about at least 15,000 startups in India who will be affected in this group, we're talking about a sizable number. And this mechanism of getting an application through CBDT, through the interministerial body of 8 undersecretaries have been replaced by some other people whom I am worried about their knowledge. At least these people, we could rely on. Now, somebody else will be looking at who will not understand what valuation is. Here again, the biggest concern we have is most of our notices are against Section 56. Here, at least whatever I can understand from the notification which is right now coming, whatever point they are talking about is Section 68. What happens to valuation? Not sure. Second, again, this is not the way the world over this problem has been addressed. Why are we re-engineering when there are good practices available in the West? Where they have created an empire of startups. Why are we reinventing? That's exactly what we have been telling since last 1 year.
Yeah.
Look at the source of fund. Look at if there has been accredited investor, and if there is a huge devaluation, look at those case to case. Instead of that, we are creating a license charge here. That's what we are doing. Only department has changed. Nothing else has changed.
Okay, only the department has changed. Nothing else has changed. We're still awaiting the final notification. So we'll hold on the judgment till we see that. But this is Srijit reacting to the information that we have so far, which is relatively sketchy. But I'm assuming that the notification will say more. Yes, Mr. Pai.
Shirin, I like what she just says, but we have had multiple rounds of discussions. We need to understand the situation in India, need to be kinder to the government, any government in fact. Because, when the government's point of view, there is an issue. From our point of view, we should find something which makes sure the honest people don't get caught. And we must make sure that dishonest people don't escape. Because today, we are caught in a bind. That's why we carve out up to 10 lakhs. Up to 10 crores will ensure the great majority of people. I'm sure Srijit can come back with a survey to say how many of the startups have raised angel round of financing of more than 10 crores in a year. I'm sure if you look at the data, it will be very small. That will take out the great majority. And that will take out the cases of people with lower income of 50 lakhs, 25 lakhs or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then for a smaller number who are above that, an accredited investor or some other mechanism to make sure it will work. But I think we must look at this to see how we can give it a try. Yes, the CBTD, I don't think people here have trust that they know how to value companies. But I think the circular, if I remember rightly, some people telling me that they have 45 days or some time limit. Circular should have a time limit. You apply within so many days, within so and so, we'll say yes and no, and there'll be an appeal process. So I think if they have a time limit and over a period of time they get over the fear, then we can ask for the abandonment of 656(2). Then we can say, look, please do away with this or have a carve-out where 99.99% go away. The shell companies get caught because they don't have accredited investors. You go after the crooks, then I think we're safe. But
okay, so you're saying that at this point in time, given the realities of the tax department as well as the state of the economy, that a carve-out, which is what the government is looking at, perhaps will have to be the preferred route. But Srijit, just on that point that Mr. Pai was making, what we are given to understand, and I keep stressing on the fact that this is still not an official notification, this is what we are picking up from sources, that the CBDT has been mandated to grant approval to startups for the purpose of Clause 6B of subsection 2 of Section 56 of the Act, or decline to grant such an approval within a period of 45 days from the date of receipt of the application from the DIPP. Yes, Srijit, go ahead.
So what I'm telling, let me just give you will this notification get implemented. Since 2017 December, CBDT has been telling don't take coercive action, but every year December there's a whole lot of orders coming in. Okay, and I myself has applied in IMB and been waiting for almost 5 months. And the tedious process of documentation, getting the documentation, everything up, getting the investor network, getting the bank statement of investor. I don't know how many investors will share that.
Yeah, but now they're saying that the IMB will be done away with. That is what is being proposed.
It's only a department which is changed. The process is same. If I need to have a letter from the investor saying my net worth is more than 2 crores, why would he give me? What we are telling is let's simplify the process. Startups should focus on building enterprise, raising money. Look at the source of funds. Look at how it is spent. Look at that. Don't spread the whole ecosystem for going behind 1 or 2 groups.
Okay, well, Ashish, let me ask you what your expectation would be. Realistically, do you agree with Mr. Pai that a middle path has to be arrived at, and this is perhaps the best at this point in time?
So I definitely agree with Mr. Pai that a middle path should be arrived at. However, I do feel that one can't be exactly in the middle. So if you have to kind of gravitate towards one side, we should definitely gravitate towards the side of the startups and the genuine investor community. For a simple reason that when you have these notifications, it is a brilliant opportunity to make sure that the issue is put at rest.
Yeah.
I don't see a possibility while the groups are doing their best to engage. And let me point out that it is with the efforts of some of the gentlemen on this panel today, including both of my co-panelists, that you're seeing some of these things come through. It is increasingly tough that when we have been interacting with some of these sources, I was there at some of these meetings as well, to get to a point. Now that they're looking at it, why not try and go a little deeper and solve it for the larger good?
Okay.
The income tax officer should be able to probe the details, assure themselves of the credentials of the people who are investing, and ensure that they are not chasing the companies for the not so good reason.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it does create a lot of cloud on the future ability of the companies to raise funding.
Okay.
And these are having consequences in the startup ecosystem.
Absolutely. So you also believe, like Srijit, that this is not going to bury the ghost of the angel tax in Section 56. This may just kick the can down the road and perhaps provide some temporary salve, so to speak. But let me bring in Saurabh Srivastav of the Indian Angel Network. Mr. Srivastav, we're still awaiting the official notification. The view on the panel, and Mr. Pai believes that this is a carve-out and an attempt to find a middle path given the economic and tax realities that we live with. But the startups on the panel still not particularly confident that this is going to change their lives in any meaningful fashion.
So I have two comments on it, Shireen, somewhat holistic because I've been involved in trying to get it resolved for the last 2-3 years. Is number one, the ideal thing would be for Section 56, this part of it, to actually be abolished, because it's a very bad formulation of a tax. Because what it does is it's trying to prevent illegal or fraudulent transactions of the kind where, favors are done from within government or politicians or whatever, and then somebody buys shares at very high prices. But by simply taxing rather than legally prosecuting such a transaction is a lazy tax formulation. So I think firstly, the ideal thing is for this part of Section 56 to go, or ideally, or simply for there to be a de minimis. Now this is the sort of thing that will need something to happen in the budget. In the meantime, what has been attempted, as I can see, is a carve-out. Now carve-outs can work very well. If you look at the software industry, the STPI scheme that was created was a carve-out. It was a carve-out to give 100% tax exemptions, to allow access to high-speed bandwidth, for many things. It was a carve-out, single window clearance. It worked brilliantly. The software industry would not have grown from 60 million to 180 billion if we didn't have that carve-out. So if a carve-out can be done in a way that it works efficiently and in real time, where the 1 year that used to take us for us to get permissions came down to weeks. So it worked brilliantly. What has been attempted is a carve-out. Now, it's certainly a lot better than what we had because that was not working.
Okay.
This seems to me to be a lot simpler. It is absolutely not perfect, and we'll have to see how it plays out in terms of how long CBDT takes.
We're given to understand that the CBDT should take 45 days as per the notification that will be issued. But,
So if it says that they don't respond in 45 days means it's approved, it's one thing. But if that 45 days is kicked down, the can is kicked down the road for another 45 days, it doesn't work. 45 days is a bit high. 30 would have been, to my mind, a better upper limit to do it.
Okay. So where do you believe that, all of you seem to suggest, with the exception of Srijit, who believes that this is not going to change anything, but Ashish, Mr. Pai and yourself seem to suggest that this is a carve-out, that this is an attempt to find a middle path. It's not ideal by any stretch of imagination or the perfect solution. Where do you believe that there has been a cop-out on the part of the tax department, on the part of the government in formulating this revised notification?
No, I think realistically, we should have expected a carve-out because I don't think anybody was expecting that Section 56 would be abolished. The question is, how good a carve-out can we make it? And I know there are different things that the IPP has been working hard to do with the tax authorities. And the real issue is acceptance of what we do as a carve-out from the tax authorities. This one, to my mind, certainly is far better than what we had before.
Okay.
Because the registration process and not having to go through that committee and a 45-day restriction. I mean, a lot of it that I read here says that, from what you're telling me, is that it should work significantly better than the one before. Now, how much better depends on execution. You could have said the STPI scheme could have been a disaster, but it was executed very well. Timelines worked, the rules worked, and it was a charm. I mean, it made a whole industry. So carve-outs can work.
Okay.
Although, to my mind, really, the Section 56, by taxing and not legally prosecuting offenders, is a very lazy formulation of tax, and that the provision itself should be relooked at, but that is not something that we were expecting.
Okay, that is not what you were. That is not what you were expecting. Well, we are still awaiting the official notification, but consensus on the panel that this does move the needle forward, but it does only just that. It moves the needle forward. It does not resolve the problem altogether. We will have to see how the CBDT now responds to this, because the ball has been very firmly and squarely shifted from the DIPP back to the court of the CBDT. Srijit Mulyal, Ashit Fafadia, Mohandas Pai and Saurabh Srivastav, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18 to discuss the implications of the proposed notification of the startup angel tax that we are expecting shortly from the government.